Ishwar, and is discussing a very important topic which is central to the type of sadhana that is normally practiced in the Ramakrishna order. Because in the Ramakrishna order, we have a synthesis of all the different systems of Hinduism, the main systems, I mean. It is obviously based on Vedanta philosophy, but at the same time, there are other schools of thought. It would not be right to say that they are schools of thought as we have philosophical schools of thoughts. They can be totally contradictory or totally different paths, because they are, after all, philosophies which have been developed by the human intellect. Whereas these paths of Hinduism, Vedanta or Tantras or Patanjali's Yoga, Sankhya, these are all systems which have their basis or roots in the Vedas, which are our only scriptures. So Swami Vivekananda was very particular when he preferred to call all the people who practiced Sanatana Dharma. Even the word Sanatana Dharma is a later term. He preferred Vaidikas, means one, because Vedas are the oldest extant scriptures of Hinduism. He said all the systems and all the synthetic systems, because not all systems are exclusive, like we have Semitic religions, which are totally exclusive to each other, like Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. They are exclusive because the disciples or the followers decided to make it exclusive. What the prophets themselves wanted, what was Buddha's intention, what was Christ's intention, we do not know. But as the religion became more and more organized, especially when it went into the hands of churches and when it became more organized, then it started becoming exclusive. You started creating boundaries that this is what Christianity means. Obviously, Christ was the inspiration behind Christianity, but you can say that he was, there's no evidence that he wanted something like Christianity. He was obviously born as a Jew. So all the religions, they tend to, maybe because of their followers or people who did not understand the true import. Every religion, I'm not saying it's only the Semitic religions, but there are many sects within Hinduism also who became exclusive. So Swami Vivekananda was reluctant to use the word Hinduism, which obviously was a name given to it later when foreigners came here. They said the people who live on the other side of the river Sindhu. So because Sa becomes her in Persian, and all the people, they called it Hindus, the people who live on the other side of Sindhu. But that geographical identity doesn't hold true any longer. So Swamiji, in one of his talks, which he delivered in the lectures from Colombo to Almora, he said it would be right to call us Vaidikas or Vedic people who follow the Vedas, because the Vedas are the oldest extant scriptures available. Not that Vedas, they say it is eternal because they are based on universal eternal principles and there is no authorship. Everybody anybody who had some kind of transcendental experience which transcended the human intellect, transcended the human physique, the body, mind, and certain truths certain spiritual truths which were revealed as principles, as eternal principles, which do not change with time. They were known as the Vedas. So it's a body of knowledge. Of course, there is many things in the Vedas which are mixed. So you have to choose only those ideals and ideas which are universal in nature, which are eternal, which do not change with the authorship or the particular rishi or the prophet. They are eternal, just like law of gravity. Whether you attribute it to Newton or anybody else, the law of gravity still holds true because it's experimentally verified. So these are experimentally verified spiritual truths. And through experience, experiential recordings of these rishis, that is known as Vedas. So in the Ramakrishna order, when you say it is a synthesis of Vedanta, which is also derived from Vedas, because Vedanta is not the only philosophy which evolved out of the Vedas. We have the Tantras, which accepts the world. There are enough verses in the Vedas which point out to the fact that it is Prakriti, the Sankhyan Prakriti or the Shakti, nature when it manifests. It is also known as Shakti in the Tantras. So, Sri Ramakrishna, through his own experience and through his own life, and through his words in the gospel, as we see now, is creating a wonderful synthesis and shows there's no need to quarrel that I am a Shakta, I believe in Vishnu. You may believe in anything in the world, but unless you have the experience of what you believe in, it is just a theory. It has to be, it is just a postulate, as in science they say. You can propose anything. You can say, I believe in this. But when you experimentally verify it, it becomes a theory, an accepted theory, unless it is verified or experimentally proved that it is wrong. So the scientific principles, when you accept, when you apply them to religious truths, it becomes a sound scientific religion which has to be experimentally verified, and which Sri Ramakrishna himself did. So he uses some similes, some examples or parables or some examples from our day-to-day lives to describe, because his message was for everyone, the learned, the so-called ignorant, and those who did not have any secular education, who could read, who could write. And that is one of the functions of that is one of the reasons why Sri Ramakrishna himself did not go to a formal school. So this was pointed out by by Swami Vivekananda, when normally when you in the West, people used to ask, which university did your master go to? So he said that was the great mistake we made by going to the university, because we got only second-hand knowledge. Whereas my master went to a university, he went directly to nature to search and discover the truths which he put before humanity. So his way of learning was it's not just parroting certain things which certain authors have discovered, and then you just get a degree by remembering those things and proving that you have the skills to understand that. That is one way of learning. That is how Swamiji described university learning. But he said he never went to the university because life itself was a university for him. Every moment of his life, he was discovering some truths and expressing it through wonderful examples. So he says, the Chit, Shakti and Brahman of Vedanta. There is the idea of the Tantras believe in Chit, Shakti, which is nothing but Chit means consciousness, Shakti means the power of consciousness. So according to Tantras, what is known as Chit Shakti is nothing but the Brahman of Vedanta. But unfortunately, till Sri Ramakrishna came, there was intense quarrel. The Shaktas would not accept non-dualistic truth. And they used to belittle this Advaita. The Advaitins would belittle the Shaktas, said it's all superstition, ignorance, you worship some Kali goddess, and all sorts of blame game was going on. So Sri Ramakrishna, the second thing he came to demonstrate was that you don't need to go to university to uh, realize these truths. Just as the rishis of the Vedas, they never obviously went and go to any university, but of course they had their gurus, they had their training in the forest, whatever, wherever they lived, and but they were great observers of nature. So he said it was the university of nature itself that Sri Ramakrishna went to. He did not rely on second-hand knowledge. So that's why Swamiji says we feel very small before Sri Ramakrishna because our knowledge is second-hand knowledge. Somebody has written books, we read them. Whether we have experience of that knowledge or not, we just remember them, memorize them, get some marks, pass some degrees. That is our knowledge, which is at the best second-hand knowledge. Whereas the knowledge that Sri Ramakrishna, he refused to go to school only to show that in the purified mind of evolved sadhakas, whether they went to school or not, these eternal truths were spontaneously revealed. And that is how the Vedas came into existence over a period of thousands of years. It's not that it was discovered once. So many rishis, through deep meditation, they discovered the spiritual truths as the scientist would do in his own laboratory. After years and years of struggle, maybe some theory is formulated, it's experimentally verified, then it is accepted by the scientific community. Similarly, our tradition in India, a lot of ideas, terms are used. Like the Shaktas use Chit Shakti. Chit means consciousness. Shakti means power. The power of consciousness. What does it mean? The Chit Shakti and Brahman of Vedanta are like water and its wetness. So it's a very subtle example Sri Ramakrishna is giving us. He says, just as you cannot, the moment you say water or the moment you see water, the quality of wetness, the ability to make anything wet, it comes with it. You cannot separate. Water is something that makes things wet. The moment you think of the wetness of water, you are reminded of water, either way. So similarly, Chit Shakti of Tantras is nothing but the Brahman of Vedanta. It's like water and its wetness. Then he gives another example. The snake and its wriggling movement. There is a snake, whether it is steady and whether it is very quiet, or whether it is wriggling and moving, it's the same snake. When it is dormant, when it is not moving, it is, you may say, it's like Brahman. And when the serpentine movement is there, you say that it's the movement of the snake. So you can't separate them. So it is, you are reminded of the snake by that movement. So, but Sri Ramakrishna asks this question, when do I call him Brahman? When he is unattached to work. Then he gives another example. A man may put on clothes, yet he remains the same man when he was naked. He was naked, now he is clothed. He may again take off his clothes. Similarly, the snake has poison inside, but it does not affect the snake. The power is of the snake, but the poison does not affect the snake. It is poison only for him who is bitten by the snake. So similarly, the Brahman of Vedanta is unattached to this world. So what is this movement that we see? What are these things? If he is changeless, he is eternal, he is of the nature of pure consciousness without any modification. Then how does the modification come? It is like the wetness of the milk, or the snake when it is stationary and the snake which is in motion. So both are attributes of the same snake, a silent snake and a snake with motion. So this is how figuratively used to express. Then he gives another example from Ramayana. He says, Prakriti or Shakti, some people call it Prakriti, mean what we see outside, which is of transformative nature, is Prakriti. If you go to Sankhya, they say Purusha is eternally different. Prakriti is Jada, that is inert. And it is the consciousness of Purusha that imparts that Shakti to that Prakriti. And then but Vedanta says it is the power of Maya. Whatever it may be, there are these two realities are supposed to be different. Whereas Thakur says they are not, Sri Ramakrishna says they are not different. Then he gives an example. Prakriti shows, he says, its grandeur when there is name and form. Now in Vedanta they say there is a name and a form associated with it. You can't separate it. The form and name always go together. You can't just think of the form without thinking of the name. The name may change from language to language. You may call it water, you may call it pani or any word. But in that language, in that understanding of that particular person, the form and the name, nama rupa. So in fact, the Vedantins say, the whole universe is made of nama and rupa, nothing else. There is a nama and there is rupa. So, Sita said to Hanuman, trying to explain Vedanta, it's part of Adhyatma Ramayana, not just the Ramayana which we, Valmiki Ramayana. So in Adhyatma Ramayana, you will find many Advaitic truths are explained in a very simple way. It's a text based on Ramayana where there's a conversation between Rama, Sita, Lakshmana and all. But it doesn't follow the Valmiki Ramayana is totally different. If you remember, it was Adhyatma Ramayana, a copy of which Sri Ramakrishna used to always keep in his room. And only selected people were given to read that book. He did not allow all his disciples to read that. Those who are full of devotion, he allowed only Swami Vivekananda, Narendra, as he was known, to come and read that. And he sometimes used to force him to read, though Swamiji was not initially interested in Advaita. So once he said, no, I don't like all these things. They talk of, because he was not an Advaitin, being a Brahmo, he believed in a God which had form, or not form, but qualities, Swarupa. It had different qualities. God was not formless in Brahmo Samaj. So naturally that tendency was there. So he hated to read that. Then Thakur used to cajole him. He said, no, you read it, not for you yourself. You read it, I want to hear. So somehow he made him read all those things. And in that, Hanuman, Sita is telling Hanuman, dear child, I myself and Rama, I myself am Rama in another form. Now here we come to the philosophy of Advaita. The two personalities of Ramayana, that is Rama and Sita, he says, I am Rama in one form and Sita in another form. I myself am Indra and Indrani, the wife of Indra, in another form. I am Brahma in one form and Brahmani in another form. Similarly, I am Rudra in one form, Rudrani in another form. Now, these are Indrani, Brahmani and Rudrani. They are the consorts. So we have this idea of Shiva and Shakti, Purusha and Prakriti. The form that is the form that is not active and the form that is active. In the initial, before creation, they are joined together. Purusha and Parama Prakriti, Avyakta Prakriti, which is not manifest. So Prakriti also, if you see, there is one Avyakta Prakriti, that is one that is not manifest, and there is a Vyakta Prakriti. When you see changes take place, it is in fact a lower Prakriti. So the lower Prakriti is what changes, or in according to Vedanta, we see change by the way of name and form, which we see. And that is when Prakriti takes its lower form. That is when all the problems start. Our problems begin the day the Purusha and Prakriti, especially the Prakriti, takes various forms. We saw the Bhagavad Gita talk, the Vishwarupa, which 11th chapter, Krishna gives a hint. First, he did not want to reveal his form, the changing form, because changing form is not always blissful. If the change is according to our liking and according to our planning, then we like Prakriti. If everything is smooth, everything is nice. But the same Prakriti, when Sri Krishna showed, takes the terrible form, then he said, no, I don't want this. But you have to take. That is why they say Prakriti is always, it's neither good nor bad. But because of the transformatory nature, when anything that transforms makes you sorrowful. Buddha took the same idea and he said, change is always miserable. Anybody who wants, if there is no security, no, everything changes. The thing that we hold dear to our lives, thinking this is eternal, our children, our grandchildren, our property, the very idea that it is not eternal, it is not eternally ours, and a day will come when we have to part with it, that brings sorrow. So this change is responsible for sorrow. So I am Rudra in one form, Rudrani in another form. All these names and forms, they are lower Prakriti. And they are manifestations of the power of this Chit Shakti. So the goal in Tantra and the goal in Vedanta, they are same. They say we want to attain to Brahman, which is changeless, which gives us, which removes all uncertainty from our life. We are afraid of death, we want to be immortal. We are afraid of change, we want to be changeless. So all the attributes of Brahman, or that is what everybody tries to attain. So you may say, then why people don't just do sadhana and try for Brahman? Because they want to see the eternal. It's a stage-by-stage progress. So a person, why does he run after money or wealth? Because he is afraid of poverty. He doesn't want the fear of poverty. He doesn't want, poverty does not give him security. So that fear of property, freedom from poverty is what he wants. The same mukti which a person wants, a wise person who is aspiring for moksha or the highest liberation in Vedanta or in Tantra or any other, the same person is motivated, but he seeks the mukti in a wrong place. But it takes a lifetime to understand this. He thinks money will give him security, but when he realizes that is not enough, then he takes up something higher. So he's traveling from lower truth to higher truth. So they are all manifestations of Chit Shakti. And she is deluding us by, as long as there is change, this delusion will remain. And if the delusion persists for a long time, we call it misery. That is why Buddha said, whatever this whole universe, you don't have to believe in God also. Whatever change is there, you are unhappy. The cause of all your sorrow is because of this change. You are holding to something as permanent, whether it is money, whether it is any other kind of security. And when you feel they are not enough to give me permanent security or permanent peace or happiness, then you go after higher things. So nothing is wrong. According to Hinduism, all these stages are necessary. You have to be convinced that this is not what I ultimately wanted. I wanted freedom. But unfortunately right now, I am happy with this. So I continue. So these are Shakti. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, without the grace of Shakti, you cannot realize Shiva or you cannot realize Brahman. Why did he say that? Because it's the power of Shakti, as placed us in the condition that we are in. She is the one who binds through her avidya maya. So it is only she who has to remove that with avidya maya through her vidya maya. That is also she is capable of. It works both ways. So he says all these names and forms, which are a lower form of Prakriti, are the power of that Chit Shakti. So that is how Tantras explain. Their idea of Shakti is Chit Shakti is one, but when it becomes a lower power, it gets confused. It manifests itself everywhere as good, bad, evil, noble people, and all those things. In meditation, it manifests everywhere. Whether you meditate, this is a very important thing. He says, in meditation as well as in the one who meditates. Because I am meditating. Why do I meditate? Because I want to go back to the state from where I came. It's like driving a car in reverse. I came out, saw this drama of name and form, and I go back because I knew that I was happy there. It's like somebody leaving his house, trying to seek seek something more exciting. Then suddenly when he is in trouble, he just longs to go back home. So that is the beautiful song which Sri Ramakrishna first asked when Naren sang in front of Sri Ramakrishna, Mono Cholo Nija Niketane. You go back to your home, your original home. So for the time being, the one who meditates knows that he has left his home and he yearns to go back to that original state, which will unite him with that Chit Shakti or Brahman. As long as I am conscious, I am meditating, I am in her jurisdiction. That is, I am within the bounds of Prakriti. So she only gives us that feeling that I am meditating. Why do I meditate? Because I want to attain to that state from which I have come down. I have fallen down and I want to go back. So as long as you know that I am meditating, that means you are not in that state. So that is why many people ask, I practice transcendental meditation. Well, it's a very popular word without knowing the meaning. How can one practice transcendental meditation? If you transcend, then there is no meditation. This is very important. Now, Sri Ramakrishna might not have gone to any university, but he doesn't use words. Of course, these are Bengali words, but even in the translation, they are so precise. He says, as long as you think that you are meditating, if you say, I'm practicing transcendental meditation, of course, it is a word. If you don't take it seriously, it is fine. But if you take it seriously, there is no meditation there, because the moment you meditate, it is not transcendence. To transcend, you have to go beyond, you have to start with meditation. Oh, I am practicing meditation. Whatever be the nature of meditation. You can't transcend and then practice meditation. Then why do you need meditation if you have transcended? So, but Sri Ramakrishna says, M is listening to all this, but just don't hear. You must internalize this. You see, he knows M is serious. He is not just going to nod his head. He is a professor who has learnt all the philosophies that were popular. He has read Christianity, he has read about Hinduism. He is a very scholarly person. And then he understands that M has understood something and he will nod his head. But he says, no, you have to internalize this. You must hear the Veda and Purana and carry out what they instruct. So practicing, listening to philosophy, understanding it is totally different than practicing it. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. Just by saying he is beyond meditation or using some words like transcendental meditation, it's a contradiction itself. If meditation was transcendental, or maybe if you use it in this sense, then it may be correct, that I am using a meditation to transcend the state of mind I am in. That is correct. But if meditation itself is transcendental, a meditation for transcendence, that would be a proper. But anyway, what they mean? Obviously, transcendental meditation means something that helps you to transcend this lower prakriti. So as long as you think I am meditating, I need my own space, I want to meditate, that means you are aspiring to reach that state, but you have not reached that state. Then he tells the Pandit, who of course was also nodding his head with him. He said it's good to associate with sadhus now and then. Here by sadhu he means people who have experiential knowledge of the truths. Man always suffers from the disease of worldliness. The company of sadhus lessens it or mitigates it to a large extent. So he says it's not only enough if you internalize it, now and then you have to live in the company of sadhus. He's telling it to the Pandit. Maybe it is Pandit Shashadhar or not Shashadhar, the Pandit who was used to invite him. He had a lot of books in his big library. And once Thakur said, by the joke, he said many of the leaves have not been cut. Maybe he has never opened them. That is that one Pandit who he was very sincere, no doubt. He was staying near Kashipur. He used to very often come to Kashipur. Now there is another Pandit who was known as Vedanta Vagish. So I think he is the Pandit who is sitting here. And the topic is instruction to Vedanta Vagish, associate with sadhus, none is mine, attitude of a servant. These are the subheadings. So, I and mine, these are the two things. Jnana, spiritual wisdom, is the belief, oh Lord, it is you who do everything. Only you are my own. This is the path of bhakti. The only natural way to remove the ego is, the more you say I and mine, it's difficult to remove that ego. And as long as the ego is there, you don't become one with the reality. You don't internalize that and you don't go back to your original state. But some people find it difficult to give up this ego. So one of the methods, Sri Ramakrishna says, say you, only you are doing everything. So that is the path of Sharanagati. He says, only you are my own. Besides all these, besides you means the Supreme Brahman, whom I consider to be the God whom I worship, my Ishta. So I superimpose for the time being, when I say you means the Lord. He says, besides all these, home, family, near and dear ones, friends, and in fact the whole universe are all yours. I will live with them, I will interact with them, but not as mine, but as yours. Indeed, everything is yours. This is a prayer. And Ajnana, this is Jnana. What is Jnana? To say everything is yours. Whatever I think is mine is really yours. And what is Ajnana? It is the belief that I do all this. I am the doer. It is my home, my family, my sons, my friends, my world, all the worldly activities. So, then he gives immediately, Sri Ramakrishna does not make a statement and leave it. He will give an example. And this is one of the best parables he has told. There, if you try to find out, in fact, there was an effort made in our training center. Somebody tried to find out all these wonderful stories must have a source, because Thakur normally used to acknowledge where he heard the stories. So many are original. No matter how much you search in the Puranas, you will not get a reference. Otherwise, he will quote. He will say, this Purana, Adhyatma Ramayana says like this. Because he had heard a lot. Somebody, when he was asked, how do you have this wonderful knowledge? First he used to say, oh, it's all mother who does it. Then once somebody pressed him, you never read books. You, in fact, cannot read books. And then how do you have so much of knowledge? How do you quote so many things? So he said, I might not have read, but I have heard. So he had a very sharp sense of hearing, and the education in that his memory was so wonderful that whatever he heard once, in Sanskrit they call them Shruti Dhara, means once you hear it, you don't forget. Even Swamiji's mother was like that. Any passage of Mahabharata was repeated in front of her, she could repeat it immediately. She also obviously did not go to school. But that's why all our scriptures, they are known as Shruti, because hearing was our tradition. Hindu tradition always believes in hearing, not reading. Things that you read, you may forget, but the sense of hearing is so powerful that whatever you hear, then when Thakur was said, no, ami podi nahi kintu ami sunechi. How much have I heard? He said, right from childhood, the only job he did was serve these old monks who were passing by, going to Puri. They used to pass through Kamarpukur. He used to go and listen to their stories, listen to their kathas. So it's not that he didn't hear, but there are some examples which are his own. Maybe this is one of his own. Or he might have heard from someone. So he said, a guru was trying to explain how the Lord was his own and no one else really belonged to him. Because this is a very harsh truth. If somebody tells you, your family doesn't love you, you are all alone, you came alone and you'll go alone, it's a very painful thing. He said, how can it be? I have such lovely sons, daughters, and grandsons, and so much, such a wonderful, if it's a happy family, then they will say that. But a guru was trying to explain to his disciple, so he told this story. And Sri Ramakrishna is quoting that. He told his disciple that the Lord alone is your own, none else really belong to him. Then the disciple said, how do you say it, sir? My mother and my wife, they have so much love for me. If they don't see me, it is all darkness for them. I mean, that is how through words they express. Oh, how much they love me. The Guru said, you are absolutely mistaken. Let me show you that none of this is yours. He wanted to demonstrate it. Because like Valmiki, the same thing happened with Valmiki. Otherwise, that robber would not have become the composer of Ramayana. That Vairagya came when Narada just taunted him and told him to ask some questions of his own family for whom he was robbing and killing other people to maintain them. Here also something similar. But this disciple says, how much I love my mother and my wife. They are so wonderful and they love me so much, and they always say, everything is darkness if you are not there. We said, okay, let me show that none of these are yours. Take some of these pills with you, swallow them when you go home, and lie down. People will think that you are dead. So this was a strange kind of course, it is a story, but to convey this message, said, this pill will make you temporarily like inert. And even if you call the doctor, he will think you are dead. But that pill had a special quality. People will think you are dead, but you will remain totally conscious of the external world and you can hear what they are talking. You will be able to see and hear everything. You can even see, but they will think you are dead. It looks that. Then I will visit your home and give the second part of the instruction. You do this, take this pill. The disciple did as he was instructed. As soon as he reached home, he swallowed all the pills and he lay down. He really appeared unconscious. Though his eyes were open, he could hear everything. But he became totally still. His mother, his wife, and other members of the family began to cry, wail. Just then his guru arrived. He came in the disguise of a physician, doctor. When they told him why they were grieving, he just acted as if he didn't know anything. In fact, he had given those pills. He said, there is medicine for it. Don't worry. I can bring him back to life. It will surely bring him back to life and he will get up. But let me tell you, it's a very strange kind of medicine. First, it has to be taken by one of the relatives here, anyone, wife, mother, and one who swallows it will die first. And the result will be that your husband will get up, but one who volunteers has to die. It's a very strange condition, but that's how the story goes. So the person who swallows it first will die, and then you give it, put it in his mouth, he will. You are all here, mother, wife, you love him so much. I'm sure that one of you will surely take the pill and save this young man. So the disciple heard all this. See, all the while, the disciple is hearing everything. His guru telling his family. First, the physician called the mother, who was just crying and shouting in grief. He said, "Mother, don't worry, no more wailing for you. Just take this medicine and your son will be saved. Nothing. But remember, you will die. Anyway, you have lived your life. Why don't you do that?" The mother took the pills in her hand and began to think about it. At least she thought about it. And then suddenly she said, after a great deal of reflection, she said, "Oh no, my son, I have other daughters and sons. I have to live for them. It's very sad that this son has died, but what about the others? I have to look after them. What will happen to them if I die? Who will look after them and feed them?" Next, the physician said, "Okay." Then he called his wife and gave her the medicine. Said, "Now you take, you are crying so much, you have a chance to save him." Then the wife was also weeping bitterly. She took the medicine in her hand. She had heard that she would die if she took it. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I say he has already met his destiny. Whatever has to happen has happened. Tell me what will happen to my little children. I have to look after them. Who will protect them? How can I take this medicine? If I die, they will suffer." She is not saying, "I don't want to die." Neither is the mother saying, they're just blaming. By this time, the disciple was hearing everything, though he was pretending to be, or maybe he was really unconscious. But because of the power of the medicine, he could hear everything. He had understood that nobody was the effects of the medicine went away. Then he suddenly stood up, immediately got up. He had understood that nobody is really his own. Immediately got up and left with his guru. The guru said to him, "Did you see? There is none but the Lord who is your own. So just go after him." So that's why Sri Ramakrishna concludes saying, so the right thing is to act upon that which endears him to you, that which develops bhakti for his lotus feet. You see, after all, the world is ephemeral. There is no real stuff in it. Then the Pandit was there, obviously was a married person. So Thakur is trying to console him. He said the householder cannot renounce completely. Jnana cannot enter the inner apartments, but bhakti can. So the Pandit is now smiling after listening to this story. "Sir, he is honest. I feel total dispassion, Vairagya, when I come here to see you. I sometimes feel like going away and leaving the world." Then Sri Ramakrishna knew that he is not ready. Out of emotion, he is saying that. Sri Ramakrishna said, no, why renounce? You people, it's enough if you renounce the world mentally. But at the same time, live in the world, in your household, with the spirit of non-attachment. So Surendra, there's one of the devotees. Sri Ramakrishna is now telling the example of Surendra. Surendra Mitra was very nice after Sri Ramakrishna passed away, he had a dream. And he said, "See, my children are hungry and they're wandering here and then they have no home to stay." Sri Ramakrishna appeared after he passed away, after his Mahasama, "Do something for them." Then he agreed to hire a haunted house for some money. He was not a very rich person. But anyway, Surendra brought his bedding. He also used to get Vairagya. In fact, he did many times after Sri Ramakrishna's passing away. He just wanted the company of these holy monks who had renounced everything and stayed in the Baranagar mutt. So now and then he used to tie his bedding and come and stay here just to get a feel. Surendra brought his bedding intending to stay here. Here means he was still alive, Sri Ramakrishna. So even before that, he used to now and then get some Vairagya and come and say, tell Thakur, I have given up. Don't want to stay in the home. I'll come here. For 1 or 2 days, he did come and stay. Then his wife said to him, you may go wherever you like during the day, but at night you must not leave home. So she was the boss of the home, so she had to go. Poor Surendra was helpless. He could not spend a single night away from his home because of his wife. And look here, it is futile to just reason. If you are restless for him, be restless for him and learn to love the Lord. Reasoning and jnana are like men who can enter the outer room, drawing room of the house. But bhakti is like women. The women are allowed to go inside because in those days, women normally did not come out and mix with everybody. To meet the women had to go in. They were in the inner apartments. So bhakti is like women who can go into the inner apartments. So jnana will allow you, that's what Sri Ramakrishna is telling him. So you have to establish a specific kind of relationship with the Lord to attain him. Sanaka and other rishis, he is now giving the different relationship that you have. Because for people who understand human relationship, they can only use that feeling or that bhava to connect with the Lord. But some rishis, they had a shanta bhava, peaceful attitude. Sanaka and all. They loved the Lord intensely, but in a very unemotional way, because they were jnanis. Hanuman, the rishis and Sanaka and other rishis attained a shanta bhava or peaceful attitude, whereas Hanuman had the dasya bhava, the attitude that a servant has for his master. But Sridama, Sudama and the cowboys of Vraja, that is of Vrindavan, took up the Sakhya attitude of a friend with the Lord. They were all playmates of Krishna or Gopala. Whereas Yashoda had Vatsalya Bhava or attitude of a mother to the son. And she took Sri Krishna, Gopala as her son. And Radha or Srimati, she is also known as Srimati, took up the Madhura attitude, that of a pure lover, sweetheart. O God, you are the Lord, I am your servant. This bhava is known as Dasya Bhava, Dasa Bhava. It is a very good attitude for the beginner as a spiritual aspirant. Then Pandit, who was a Jnani, obviously, nods his head and said, yes. Then he is giving some instructions to one Ishan Mukhopadhyay who was there about difference between Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga and what are the signs of Jnana. The Pandit from Sithi, he was the Pandit, he has gone, Vedanta Vagish. Twilight is fast approaching and music for the Aarti begins in the Kali temple. Thakur bows before the pictures of the deities. He sits on a smaller cot, preoccupied with some thought. A number of devotees come in again and sit on the floor. Some have left, some are there. There is total silence in the room. 1 hour has elapsed when Ishan Mukherjee and Kishori arrive. They salute Thakur and take their seats. Ishan is very fond of rituals such as Purush Charana. Purush Charana is a methodical increase and decrease of whatever you practice. Say you decide to practice japa or repetition of the holy name. You do it for 1,000. In Purush Charana, they say, with the waxing of the moon and waning of the moon, Amavasya and all, they start from one point, go on increasing and then slowly decrease it and then stop. So they decide for 15 days I'll do this. This is the number. That is known as Purushchan. But it has to be methodical. Every day there should be a small increase and decrease of the other half of the. So it's known as Purushcharana. So Ishan was very fond of all these rituals. So he is a karma yogi. I mean, he was a very busy Ishan Mukherjee. If you see his life, very active. He was doing a lot of charity also. Thakur is now telling him, Sri Ramakrishna, it is no use repeating jnana, jnana. There are two signs of attainment of spiritual knowledge. Just by repeating jnana, jnana does not come. The two each essential qualities is, one is anuraga, that is love for God. You may reason, you may discuss, but if you have no love for God, no devotion for Him, it is all going to be futile. The second sign is the awakening of the Kundalini power. As long as the Kundalini lies dormant, one does not gain jnana. You may read book after book and reason them out, but have no restlessness for God. That is not a sign of jnana. Now this Kundalini, Sri Ramakrishna is going to give a very small explanation here. What happens when Kundalini awakens? Now there are fantastic ideas about this Kundalini. There's a very big yoga seminar. It has been 2 or 3 practitioners of Kundalini yoga are coming there. I don't know what they actually are going to discuss, but it is not as simple as that, because if you see Sri Ramakrishna's definition, Kundalini is not something which is just a term. It's not a random rise of nervous energy in the spinal cord. It requires years and years of practice. And not only that, it's not necessary that you practice Kundalini yoga to get Kundalini awakened. It's not like some process where you just put some chemicals, do some exercise, and the Kundalini goes up and down and you can measure it. It's not as easy as that. Kundalini means the consciousness which is normally in the 3 lower centers of the human being becomes steady. So one of the signs of the rise of Kundalini is your devotion increases. That is what Sri Ramakrishna is explaining. The 3 stages from Bhava, Bhakti and Prema. These are the 4 stages. Bhava means ecstasy. That is at a lower level of the nervous energy rising up the spinal column. It can be through Bhakti, it can be through Karma Yoga, it can be through Jnana. Kundalini has nothing to do with some tricks that people play and think that there is some feeling, some feeling. Some people try to explain that when I sit, maybe it is some muscular pain or something. They feel something twitching in their spine and then they jump, say, oh, that is my Kundalini going up. Nothing of that sort happens. Very clear, Sri Ramakrishna says, if the Kundalini, first he has Bhava. It takes years and years. He goes into a feeling when he hears of the Lord. The moment he hears, he feels like giving up all the work and just focusing on devotion to the Lord. Then comes Bhakti, that is devotion. And then comes Prema, that is intense love, where you cannot even bear the separation, which was there with Radha. That was the Prema. It's very difficult that this nervous energy, which is very often mistaken for the rise of Kundalini, where our silly and stupid emotions and emotional jumping and all sorts of exercises are used. It has absolutely nothing to do with Kundalini. It's not something which you can measure, or neither can it. It has some external characteristics. Everything is internal, as Sri Ramakrishna says. One experiences Bhava, Bhakti and Prema in different stages. This is known as Bhakti Yoga. Karma Yoga is an extremely difficult path. By practicing Karma Yoga, now he is talking of Hatha Yoga here. One gains many occult powers, the powers to perform miracles, which Sri Ramakrishna considered to be the most stupid things, which divert you from the main goal. Then Ishan, there was one person always trying to disturb the devotees there was Hajra Mashay. But he was very popular because he used to sit at the gate of Thakur's room and stop people. There are some people, whom he caught, and he was he considered himself to be Gyani. He said, he said he had more Jnana than Ramakrishna himself. He used to stay and catch hold of some people who liked his way of explaining and things. So Ishan now, when he finds that Sri Ramakrishna is telling something very serious, something which has to be practiced, so he feels a bit uncomfortable. He says, now I'm going to meet Hajra Mashay, because that is much more easy to just talk to him some philosophy and go home and just be happy with whatever state he is in. Thakur keeps silent. After a while, Ishan returns to the room accompanied by Hajra. Now Hajra is also come, as if trying to prove some point. Thakur is still seated silently. He doesn't object. He doesn't say, why are you going there or something. After a while, Hajra says to Ishan, let us go. He knows, Hajra knows. He says he is going to meditate. He knows that Sri Ramakrishna becomes very serious when Hajra comes. This fellow is disturbing everyone and misguiding. If he just is a nuisance, it's okay. But he was not only a nuisance, but he was positively confusing people by giving fantastic ideas to them, quoting from this scripture, that scripture. And he understands. Now Thakur is in a very serious mood. Maybe he'll say something. So he says he's going to meditate, let us go. Because he knows whenever Thakur never criticized. In fact, he allowed Hajra to stay there. He said it's all mother's wish. If she wants, she will take. I am not going to do. Once or twice he told him, but then when he saw that this fellow is not going, he just kept quiet. And his way was to solve the problem through meditation. And Hajra knew that. So he came ready for a fight or maybe some argument with Thakur. Thakur was just meditating and he told Ishan, let us go. He is meditating now. Thakur is seated silently. He begins to meditate. He counts japa on his fingers and then he touches his fingertips first to the top of his head, then to his forehead, then throat, his heart, and lastly the navel. And Master Masha is observing everything. He has seen Hajra and Ishan leaving because he has become very serious. He is trying to explain certain things, but he's silent. So M knew what he's doing. So he is giving an explanation on behalf of Thakur. He says, easy meditating on the primeval power, that is Chit Shakti, through the 6 spiritual centers, because that is what he had explained earlier. Is this the communion with God talked about in the Shiva Samhita? Shiva Samhita, and there are many books which talk of this union of Shiva and the rise of Kundalini. There are many things which are not part of Vedanta, but have been independently arrived at, which has, of course, its basis in Vedas. Everything has a basis in Vedas, but many of the things which form part of Tantras are explained in a different way in Vedanta. They say the rise of consciousness to the different centers. The idea of centers itself is not there in Vedanta, but somehow the synthesis of Vedanta and Tantra, Sri Ramakrishna is has explained this to M many times. So M is now thinking, is Sri Ramakrishna experiencing these different states? Then Ishan goes to the Kali temple with Hajra. They see that Thakur is not in a mood to talk, because I think he feels he's just wasting his time talking to this Hajra, who is very argumentative in nature. Not only he confuses others, he comes and harasses Sri Ramakrishna. So whenever he comes, I think that's the best solution. He just meditates, and Hajra knew that, because even before he came, seeing Sri Ramakrishna's serious attitude, he said, he's meditating, let us go. He knew this is not, I can't possibly talk with this Sri Ramakrishna. And then Ishan comes back. He is just alternating between Hajra and Thakur. So he goes to the Kali temple. Thakur has been meditating, and it is about 7:30. Then Adhar Sen comes. He's another great devotee. So anyway, Sri Ramakrishna is talking to him. After a while, Thakur also goes to darshan for the darshan of Mother Kali. After her darshan, he picks up some flowers offered at the feet of the deity and brings them to touch his forehead. Then he fans the mother with chamara. Chamara is that which you wave in front of the deity. He is filled with divine emotion. Coming out of the shrine, he sees Ishan busy with his rituals, performing Sandhya. In the evening, most of the Brahmins, they perform this Sandhya Vandana. It's a ritualistic kosha kushi they take, and he's doing that. There are a small water container. Kushi is a spoon for offering water and other things. They are normally made of copper. So, seeing him, and then, of course, Sri Ramakrishna still has some concern about Ishan, that he should not be misguided. So he talks about the importance or the triviality of just doing external worship. And he sings a song, beautiful song, Gaya Ganga Prabhasadi, that's a famous song. What is the need of doing all this if you have love for the mother in your heart? So that's a long song. We will discuss it in our next class. If there are some questions. Yeah.
So we started with the Sankhya connected to the Advaita. Sankhya comes before, which is atheistic. And then the Advaita is very mystic.
Yeah, it's the conclusion of Sankhya, you may say. You see, these philosophies are, Thakur always used to say, or Swamiji used to say, that we are always traveling from lower truth to higher truth. Nothing is wrong. So a person who loves God may be greater than a person who loves his money, but the person who loves his money is in the first stage. Till he understands the futility of, he feels that money is not going to give me what God gives. He gives that up. So it is a lower stage. Similarly, Sankhya is also necessary. Just as money and all those things are necessary for people at a lower, it's a lower truth. Hinduism never says, this is sin, you should not do this or that. Because you are not equipped for higher things, you start with a lower truth, do these rituals, do whatever you like. Then a day will come when you understand that these are not enough. Similarly, Sankhya also. It's not that it's a different philosophy, obviously. Apparently it is different, but it is a step leading to Advaita, where Purusha and Prakriti are separated for convenience, which Advaita says Vyavarika Satya. Vyavarika means in practice we see duality of Nama and Rupa. But if you really see, that duality vanishes. But that has to come through experience. Advaita comes through experience. So understanding Advaita and understanding Sankhya is a more conducive to people who have a scientific bent of mind, for whom the world is real. Physics is real, chemistry is real, sound engineering, everything is real. Isn't it? Purusha has no role. It's the pure consciousness, which you have just to... It's a word for us right now. What do you mean by pure consciousness? We understand consciousness in and through Prakriti. We catch hold of the reflected consciousness of Purusha and we understand. But we know this is temporary, this is a lower Prakriti. And by her grace, we catch hold of Parama Prakriti, which is the goal of Shakta, that we go to that Avyakta, unmanifest Prakriti, before she started creating. That is the goal which all these tantrics, Shaktas, they want to attain. And when what is known as Chit Shakti is nothing but this Purusha or Brahman of Vedanta. That is exactly what this Thakur is trying to explain. Like a snake and its motion. When the snake is moving, it's the same snake, but it's moving now. So it assumes a different form, but the snake doesn't change. So that's the idea. Okay.
Who wrote the Ramayana?
Adhyatma, I don't know the authorship. Actually, they say there are so many. Uh, see, because it's a text much later than Valmiki Ramayana, obviously. Yoga Vashishta Ramayana, that is another Ramayana. They will say, they will give, see, for example, Vyasa is the author. We don't know which Vyasa, how many Vyasas were there. So anything, they'll just put their name as Vyasa. So we do not know the author. There will be some author. It's a conversation recorded between Yoga Vashishta, between Rama and Vashishta, his guru. So they have created a whole story based on Ramayana. And Rama is asking questions to Vashishta, who is explaining to him the true nature of sannyas and all those renunciation, vairagya, detachment. And after getting that knowledge, then he becomes a wise ruler. That's what they say. But it's nowhere mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana. We have Vashishta as his guru, who taught him all the sciences. But this is a creation. Any authors normally, they don't give their name. They're all fictional. Because they didn't bother about name and fame. They just wanted the ideas to be transmitted. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.